Hey there, my people, and welcome back to the channel. I've been busy working on another project, and now I'm freed up to share this episode of the Twilight Zone with you, titled The Fear. Peeps, this is the second to last episode of the series to air, and it's the last episode that was written by Rod Serling himself. This episode is about a fashion magazine editor who's retreated to her cabin in the mountains for some rest, and a state trooper who comes by because of reported sightings of bright lights in the sky. That's the setup, peeps. Now let's get to it.
Are you Miss Scott?
That's right.
Well, I'm Trooper Franklin, Miss Scott. May I come in for a moment?
Franklin comes in and looks around and says, "Attractive place." Charlotte Scott says, "That's gracious of you to say so. What else is new, Trooper?" Franklin says, "You came into town this morning," to which Charlotte responds, "It's an unhappy pilgrimage that I'm forced to make every week. No one will deliver my supplies, so I have to get them myself." "Was there anything else, Trooper Franklin?" Sister girl, it sounds a little curt, peeps. Franklin says, well, Mr. Bart down at the general store said something about you telling him you'd seen some kind of lights in the sky last night." Charlotte says, "So?" And Franklin says, "Well, I just thought I'd come up here and ask you a few questions about it." Charlotte says, "That's intrepid of you, Trooper. I did see something last night." And okay, yeah, peeps, I had to Google how she was using the word intrepid, and it's used to describe someone who's fearless, adventurous, and willing to take risks. An intrepid person is often brave and courageous, facing danger or challenges head on without hesitation. And then Charlotte goes on to say, "I did mention it to that pickle barrel wheeler dealer. I mentioned it because the run of dialogue is so dull it makes me want to retire from the human race. I'm up here in rainfall, wind velocity, snowfalls, and gripping bingo games, so I thought I'd inject something new into the dialogue." Okay, a little snooty and a bit condescending? Much?
I did see something last night.
What kind of lights would you say they were?
When he asks what kind of lights would you say they were, Charlotte goes off on him and says,
Look, if you're looking for a red-hot, gun-em-down battle against evil, you can saddle up and head north, because you won't find it here.
You're here from New York, aren't you, Miss Scott?
Charlotte says, "Is that a misdemeanor?" Franklin says, No, not at all. I was just interested. We heard you taking a place up here, a cabin. You live alone. You were some sort of fashion editor, weren't you?" "Yes," Charlotte says, turning to get a smoke. "I was some sort of a fashion editor. My yearly salary would have bought the main street of that rinky-dink whistle stop down there, and I had what is euphemistically known as a nervous breakdown. So I came up here to be alone, said journey being the biggest rock I ever pulled, because you can't be alone here. You have to share your private life with country bumpkins and Gilbert and Sullivan state troopers. There is nothing for you here, so why not run along?" And she waves her hand in a dismissive gesture. Franklin said, "I think you're quite right. There isn't much here for me, or for that matter, anyone else." Ooh, snap, did he just burn her? And then he turns and heads for the door. Charlotte says, "What's that supposed to mean?" Franklin turns and says, "That's supposed to mean that in your book, anyone who hasn't bought their clothes on Fifth Avenue is a bumpkin, and that elusive thing called culture is really only an inherent legacy available only to insufferable snobs, of which, Miss Scott, I'm afraid you are a charter member." Ooh-wee, That was definitely a burn. Then this happens.
What's happened?
The pair look around and then they go back inside the cabin. Franklin shuts the door and Charlotte rushes over to put the chain on. Franklin says, "You're not frightened, are you, Miss Scott?" Charlotte turns to face him and says, "I'm afraid you put me in the wrong sorority, Mr. Franklin. I'm a charter member, but not of snobs. I'm the founder and the chairman of the board of the Society of Frightened People. So frightened that they can't face the world, so they go away to little mountain retreats. They act superior because they think it hides their tensions and neuroses." Franklin says, "Thank you for an honest answer. Why don't you rustle up some hot coffee for the two of us? I'll go out and check around and stay with you an hour or so to see if it comes back. I'll drive you back into town if you'd like. You know what? Peeps, come on, this way too much conversating for me. I got one time to see them lights. And look, we ain't gotta talk about nothing. It's like, you know what, brother man, let's get up in your police car and let's hightail it out of here. As a matter of fact, let me go run in the cabin, throw a quick bag together, grab me a credit card, and then you know what? You gonna get me off of this mountain and I'm going into town. You see how dark it is out there? You know some tore up stuff happen at night in the dark. Oh, okay? We all know that. We all have seen these movies 150 dozen times. Let me run in, get an ATM card, toss me a bag together, and then you can drive myself up off this piece. So instead of following my advice and getting the heck up out of there, they stand around having a conversation.
What was it? The noise and the lights?
A meteor, or maybe an aircraft off its course. Those would be the rational explanations.
Give me an irrational one.
Maybe something from outer space.
The pair are still talking when Charlotte sees something. "What's that?" she asks. Franklin turns to look out the window, and there's this big bright light. All right, you know, peeps, it always starts with what? With them lights. So Franklin goes outside and he's looking around, and brother man got his pistol out, and he got one of those big old school flashlights. My dad had one of those back in the day. So brother man is walking around in the woods, and he stops and looks up, and he sees a large piece of the trunk of a tree busted up like something hit it. Franklin keeps walking, and he's shining his flashlight as he goes. He shines the flashlight up, and he sees more trees that have trunks and thick branches broken apart and split in two like something came crashing through there. And peeps, as he's walking, he sees this. Oh, here we go now. I knew it. I knew this was gonna be messed up. I just knew it. Your car moving by itself. And crashing apparently by itself. Dude, y'all should have been gone. I don't know why people don't listen to me. Charlotte comes rushing out and sees the partially overturned car and says, "Haven't you ever heard of an emergency brake?" Franklin says, "Yep. Heard and used. This emergency brake was on." Charlotte says, "There's only two of us and neither of us were near the car, so who pushed it?" Franklin said, "Maybe nobody. Maybe the brake just gave out." "Yeah, right." Charlotte says, "You believe that?" Look, I don't believe in Charlotte. Okay? Because a whole bunch of hinky stuff is starting to go on now. And Franklin says, "For the time being, that's the only explanation I can conjure up." Then he opens the passenger side door of the police cruiser and reaches in to get the radio. He has the mic in his hand and he presses it, and then he says, the radio's out, no power at all. He turns to Charlotte and says, you got a phone inside? And Charlotte says, that's one concession to privacy that I didn't make. I've got a telephone and some coffee. At this moment, both are luxury items in my book. They both turn and go back into the cabin, and Franklin tells her to lock the door. Charlotte does and says, you've just applied for membership in my club for frightened people. Franklin says, lady, I've been in 2 wars and I've been a policeman between and after, and I'm not ashamed to say that I've racked up more scared hours than most rabbits. Charlotte says, thank you for that honest answer. Franklin says, Miss Scott, maybe you can learn this. Maybe it'll help you. Being frightened, it's a normal, natural human function, just like breathing. It's how you react to fright. That's what really counts. You can get the shakes and crawl under a bed, or you can clench your fist and go about your business. Charlotte says, brother man, you can clench your fist. Okay, peeps, I'm paraphrasing, but I'll be under the bed. Franklin smiles and says, being frightened hasn't hurt your sense of humor, has it? Well, it looks like the pair has formed a sort of camaraderie, and they're gonna need it, peeps, because Franklin steps over to the phone and discovers this.
Your phone is dead.
Okay, you know what? This thing just got real, because y'all did see that shadow thing, right? That's why you should have been gone. Now you stuck out there. The car turned over on its side. The car radio don't work. The phone don't work. And did you forget about the lights in the sky? And now this shadow thing? Y'all stuck, peeps. Brother man got his pistol, but girlfriend, I hope you got a shotgun, a flamethrower. Girl, I hope you got something up there, because that shadow didn't look right. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, doom and gloom, but I think y'all hit up in this piece. Let's continue. So Charlotte and Franklin are in the cabin drinking coffee and chatting when Charlotte hears a noise and she almost drops her coffee cup. It rattles Franklin and he says, what's the matter? Charlotte is looking up and she says, listen, don't you hear it? It's up there. And she's pointing to the ceiling. Franklin is looking up and he says, where? And Charlotte, who's 2 minutes away from a full-blown hysteria, says it's on the roof. Peeps, those are words you do not want to hear. Well, except for it's in the house. You definitely don't want to hear that. Peeps, she's saying something is on the roof. Franklin asks, is there an attic or something? And Charlotte says no. Franklin asks, is there some way to get up on the roof from inside the house? And Charlotte says no, not from inside the house. And so Franklin heads for the door and Charlotte is rushing behind him saying, oh, please, please don't go out there, please. And, Franklin, being a cop, an old school, a manly man. Oh, he most assuredly is going out there and he's going to see what's going on. He pulls his pistol and says, when I leave, you lock this door after me and you don't open it up until you hear my voice telling you to. And peeps, I just paraphrased that a little bit. Charlotte says, hey, you best believe I am not opening up this door for nobody but you. Also paraphrase it a little bit. And so Franklin leaves and Charlotte, she shuts the door and locks it behind him. So now Franklin is outside and he's scoping the place. He's shining the flashlight up on the roof, scanning from one end of the roof to the other end. He walks all the way to the left side of the cabin while all the time shining his flashlight over into the woods and up onto the roof. Then he walks over to the right side of the cabin, looking and scanning with the flashlight. At one point, he sees a ladder on the ground and he picks it up and places it against the roof. Then he climbs up. Peeps, this dude is walking on the roof in those boots, and that is not a stunt man. I have to give Brother Man his props. After having thoroughly checked out the roof and seeing nothing, he climbs back down. Peeps, he's walking back towards the front door when he sees something. Okay, you know what? This is all the way messed up. The partially turned over car is back on its wheels, and there's giant fingerprints on the side of the car. Like something gigantic picked it up and then set it back down on its wheels. People, this giant thing is out there with them. And this is why you leave before it gets dark, because all the scary stuff comes out and you get jammed up. And Franklin and Charlotte are all the way jammed up because, if you will remember, neither the car radio nor the telephone works. Oh, what is so difficult about, look, be a chicken, own that thing. Look, I'm the first, the middle, and the last one to tell you, I am afraid of everything. Everything. Okay, you know what? I went and saw the movie Wicked. And at the end, them flying monkeys, they still scaring me. And I'm almost 70 years old. You know what? I own it. This is my reality. I'm taking my fear of the dark and monsters and noises to the grave with me. Okay, so you know what? People, come on, you gotta pick these signals up and you gotta know when to book. When that cop first showed up, that she should have been standing on the porch with her suitcase in her hand. Because I got one time to see some lights. And it's like, no, you don't have to come out and investigate. You don't have to take your big flashlight and point to stuff and look around and get, no, brother man, you ain't gonna have to do all that. All I needed to do was look outside and see 3 lights in the sky. And the minute you pulled up, look, you ain't even gotta stop. Dude, just slow the car down and toss open the passenger door. I jump in the bad boy, me and my suitcase. Okay, I'm just saying. So Franklin goes over to the door and knocks, and Charlotte lets him in. She asks, "Did you see anything?" Franklin locks the door and tells her there's nothing on the roof. And he goes on to say, if there had been something on the roof, it would have crushed this house flat. And Charlotte gives him a look and says, how?
Because the thing moved the car back to where it was. There are fingerprints on the car, and we shouldn't have any trouble finding our invader, because he must stand better than 500 feet high.
Okay. You about 500 feet tall, huh? All right, let's see what unravels next. It's the next day and we see Franklin stretched out on the couch. Charlotte comes out of her bedroom and Franklin says good morning. Franklin sits up and Charlotte asks him the time and he responds it's 6 o'clock. Franklin asks, you get much sleep? And Charlotte responds, a couple of hours off and on. How about you? And Franklin says, about the same, I guess. Charlotte says, I didn't hear anything. And Franklin says, I didn't either. Then he gets up and starts for the door saying, well, let's greet the morning and whoever else happens to be in it. Franklin steps outside and looks around and he walks towards where the police car is. Charlotte walks out of the door following him. They're both looking at the car when Franklin looks up, then he walks off. Charlotte watches him for a minute, then she follows. They walk out of the trees into a small clearing, and peeps, this is what they discover.
It's a footprint.
Yeah, that's what it is, all right. It's a footprint. There's somebody out here, as high as a mountain. We just reach down and crush us.
Then what can we do?
I can try and fix that car radio and phone in for some help.
Peeps, Sister Girl says, you know what? You do you, boo. But as for me, I'm booking up out this piece and heading for the village down the road. Somewhere, anywhere away from here. And, okay, that's me paraphrasing. And Franklin responds, use your head. It's 30 miles to the village. Charlotte says,
Oh, you can do whatever you like. I'm getting out.
Scott!
And so Charlotte does the proverbial damsel running away and falling down bit. And as she goes to get up, she sees this. Okay, peeps, the alien is only a little bit scary. The Cyclops one-eye thing, alright, I do find that a tad off-putting, but the alien isn't overly or overtly scary to me. Just so long, though, as you don't focus too much or too long on that one eye, because that, okay, yeah, that's a bit off-putting. Franklin shows up and pulls his pistol, and he tells her to take off running for the village, and he'll try and keep this nightmare occupied. Charlotte stands and says, you think they'd even hear the end of my story before they locked me up? Franklin says, that's the risk we have to take. They chat some more, and Charlotte finally says she's changed her mind and she's going to stay right there with them. And Brother Man advances, aims, and he lets loose. Charlotte says, amazed, it's a balloon. Is this what we've been frightened of? A fugitive from a Thanksgiving Day parade? Something grabs Franklin's attention and he turns to check it out. Then he says, not quite, and he walks off to the side. Peeps, look, it's a small spaceship. Franklin is circling around it when Charlotte joins him. Franklin says, this is what we've been frightened of. Take a look at it. And Charlotte crouches down beside him. Franklin says, look at the source of our nightmare.
Must report failure. Dug up shoe print. Sprayed fingerprint on Earth vehicle. Inflated giant figure. Entire operation ended by Earthmen's failure to be frightened. Great leader, let us depart before they crush us.
We see Franklin and Charlotte standing there in amazement, watching the little ship take off. Then they do this wrap-up kind of chat, with Franklin saying, you know something? I wish them luck. Maybe the next planet they land on, they can be the giants. Charlotte says, what about our next visitors? What if they are giants? And then Franklin looks at her and says, well, I think you'd spit in their eye. That's what I think. Yeah, okay. And then Rod has this to say.
Fear, of course, is extremely relative. It depends on who can look down and who must look up. But it's been said before with great validity that the worst thing there is to fear is fear itself.
Peeps, this was the next to the last episode of Twilight Zone's run, and it was Rod Serling's final script that he himself wrote. For a next to the last episode, I found that it had its ebbs and flows, a couple quasi-scary parts for me, and some slower moments. I love one set, two character episodes. I find that it stretches the actor and tends to be more dramatic. My favorite one set episode of The Twilight Zone being the one with Robert Redford in it, titled Nothing in the Dark. And if you haven't seen it, check out my playlist and you'll find it there. I like the fact that Franklin and Charlotte had to grow on one another. Charlotte hiding her fear and neuroses under a snooty air, and Franklin thinking he's got her pegged as a snooty rich socialite. They're a bit adversarial in the beginning, then they join forces to survive, and by the end of the episode, there's genuine respect. I felt the ending was peeps a bit cheesy with the giant inflatable balloon, though I couldn't stare at that bad boy too long because of that one eye thing. That was a bit creepy to me. All in all, the episode wasn't bad. Well, my people, that's it for now. To my subscribers, y'all my peanut butter and jam for sure. Thanks so much for the commitment to the channel. And to my viewers, I so appreciate y'all as well. Please give me a like and a thumbs up perhaps to keep the channel moving. Y'all stay healthy now, be kind to one another, and do be mindful of your own needs, okay? I'll see y'all next time.